If there is one place on America's map where evil doesn't need to hide, doesn't need to run, doesn't need to cover its face, it is Derry. A small town, postcard calm, with a river, a bridge, a summer fair, and rows of maple trees burning red. Yet beneath that coat of peace lies a question that chills the bone. Why is it that every few decades, children vanish, blood is spilled, cries rise into the air, and then everything returns to ordinary life as if nothing ever happened? Not one person looking away, not one family pretending to forget. An entire community, a collective nervous system, locking its own eyes in front of tragedy. And in that darkness, Pennywise is not merely a clown. He is a warped mirror of human nature, the rusty iron taste of fear, the biggest question about us. When evil is long enough, close enough, familiar enough, do people turn themselves into accomplices just to feel safe? Derry is not hell in the classic sense. There are no roaring flames, no demons dragging chains. Derry is dangerous because it looks like home. It has schools, a library, a church, a police station, adults who speak about morality, order, and the future. But Derry also has street corners where the weak yellow glow of lampposts never seems to reach the bottom, and storm drains like open throats swallowing the sound of running feet. And there, where mildew mixes with the hiss of leaking water, a voice as sweet as candy, as cheerful as a festival, calls children closer with the simplest promise. Come here. I've got something you like. Pennywise arrives like the universe's worst joke. He wears the shape of a clown, a symbol invented to soothe children, to make people laugh, to turn fear into applause. But with Pennywise, the clown is no longer art. It is a trap, a painted smile that never tires, never trembles, never reveals real sadness. A face that makes you forget there is something hungry behind it. And his hunger is not the hunger of an animal. Pennywise hungers for fear. He eats fear the way we eat salt, the way we drink hard liquor, the way we inhale winter air, just to feel we are still alive. But if Pennywise were only a predator, the story would be simple. The tragedy of Derry is not that a monster exists. The tragedy is that the monster lives with the town like a secret passed down through size. It does not erupt continuously. It moves in cycles, like the heartbeat of something hibernating beneath the ground. There are years when Derry is so peaceful that people think they've been blessed. And then suddenly, some summer, some rainstorm, some child disappears. People search, people cry, people pray, and time moves on like mud covering footprints. Missing posters fade. Newspaper clippings sink to the bottom of drawers. Rumors become the kind of story you don't tell in front of children. And in the end, silence wins. Let's return to the moment the gates of hell open with something small, ordinary, almost cruel in its simplicity. A paper boat, a boy named Georgie in the rain, chasing that boat as it floats along the gutter. One careless minute, one corner, one storm drain cover. And there, Pennywise's smile blooms like a poisonous flower. He doesn't lunge out like an action film. He talks. He coaxes. He makes a child believe death can wear bright colors. And then, in a moment as brief as a finger snap, Derry loses another child. That pain should have jolted the whole town awake, like church bells dragging people out of sleep. But Derry does not wake. Derry curls inward. Derry does what human beings do most often when something is too horrific to face. Derry tries to turn it into an accident, and then other children begin to see. Not everyone sees Pennywise. Not everyone hears the call from the drains. But children, especially those who are isolated, bullied, forgotten, see more clearly. Maybe because they haven't been trained long enough to lie to themselves. They haven't been taught to label the unexplainable as I must be imagining it. They don't yet have debts, careers, pride, all the reasons to choose safety over truth. They are afraid, but their fear is real, specific, with a smell and a sound. And precisely because of that, they become the sweetest prey. The group people call the losers, the outcasts, are the crack in Derry's wall of silence. Each of them carries a private wound, not only bruises on skin, but a missing piece inside. One lives in a violent home. One is treated as the class joke. One is haunted by illness, by death, by contamination, by the feeling of not belonging anywhere. And Pennywise, like a reader of souls, does not attack with one fixed shape. He becomes exactly what each child fears most. A painting whose eyes follow you. A whisper from darkness. A form that should not exist. That is how he hunts. Not with muscle, but by touching the weakest nerve. But the strangest part is this. When the losers run back and tell what they've seen, adults don't listen. It's not that they don't love their children. It's that the story doesn't enter their awareness in the usual way. It's like water poured onto an oil slick, sliding off, leaving only discomfort before it disappears. Conversations about missing kids are cut short by busyness. Questions are redirected to grades. Fear is dismissed as imagination. The whole town seems to have a thin mist covering its memory, making even blood feel distant, like it happened to someone else. To understand why Derry looks away, you have to understand that Pennywise is not merely down in a drain. He is in the town structure. He is like fungus beneath a house, unseen yet feeding on every corner. He doesn't need to control each person like a puppet. He only needs to shape an environment where it's easier to stay silent than to speak, easier to turn away than to face. And Derry has been that kind of place for a very long time. So long that its history is no longer a human history, but a history of all the times people did not see. In the mythology of this story, Pennywise is not a lone killer. He is it, an ancient entity, something beyond comprehension, like a fallen star that landed on Earth and fell asleep inside stone. He can survive across centuries, change forms, slip into dreams. When something like that lives under your feet, everything about it takes on its color. Violence in Derry often feels too much, as if something pushes people one step further into cruelty. Crowds can turn vicious without warning. Bullies can become feral. Accidents can feel like destiny. And afterward, memory fades unnaturally fast, like ink meeting water. There is a detail that makes your spine go cold. Derry doesn't only lose children. Derry has large calamities, disasters, fires, massacres, accidents, as if the town must pay a regular tax in blood. And every time, after the ash settles, people rebuild, reopen shops, hold festivals, and tell each other they must go on living. That sentence sounds human, but in Derry, it becomes a curse. Keep living by forgetting those who were swallowed. So what makes an entire community choose to forget? In real-world psychology, human beings have a powerful defense mechanism: denial. When a truth is too painful, too vast, too absurd, the brain shrinks it so you can still sleep, still work, still raise children. We call it normalcy bias, the belief that things will be fine, that the abnormal is only an exception. But in Derry, that mechanism is pushed into something pathological. It stops being individual survival. It becomes culture, a collective habit. Don't dig too deep. Don't ask too much. Don't make trouble. Don't stir the mud. And this is where Pennywise becomes most terrifying, because he doesn't only eat fear. He plants fear into the social structure. He makes people afraid of being called crazy if they speak, afraid of being isolated if they keep asking, afraid of retaliation if they touch power, afraid that admitting a monster exists means they will have to act, and action is dangerous. So silence becomes the safe choice. And when most people stay silent, silence becomes what feels right. That is the dark circle. Evil doesn't need to hide. It only needs to make truth more exhausting than pretending. We also have to face what is often overlooked. Derry has people who actively enable it, whether they know they are doing it or not. There are those with power, police, leaders, voices that shape the town's story. When tragedy happens, they manage information, define the narrative, decide who is credible and who is not. And in a place accustomed to not seeing, power slides more easily toward cruelty. A police officer can become rougher than normal and still be accepted. A domestic abuser can exist in plain sight with no intervention. Warning signs are treated as private matters. Cries for help are labeled noise. Pennywise doesn't need to appear. He only needs people to do the rest. But the losers, somehow, stand up. Not because they are the strongest. They stand up because they have nothing left to lose. They've already been pushed to the margins, so they are not afraid of being pushed farther. They are wounded, so they recognize each other's wounds. And in a town that teaches people to forget, they do the opposite. They remember. They tell one another. They assemble fragments into a picture. And when that picture takes shape, it is more horrifying than any monster. This town has lived with a monster so long it treats it like weather. The confrontation with Pennywise, then, is not only a battle in the sewers, not only blood and screams. It is a battle of belief. Pennywise grows stronger when people are afraid, and when they believe they are powerless. He weakens when fear is named, pulled into daylight, stared down without lowering the eyes. In old myths, demons are cast out by the true name, by ritual, by vow. In Derry, the ritual is simply refusing to be silent anymore. That's why children, with imagination and friendship, become a rare weapon. Imagination gives their fear a shape they can fight. Friendship keeps them from being isolated, from being swallowed one by one. But don't romanticize it too quickly. The price of looking straight at a monster is memory. When the losers grow up and leave Derry, they slide into the town's mechanism. They forget. Not because they betray their vow, but because Derry and Pennywise hold a strange power over memory. It's like a nightmare you try to bury so you can keep living. You can build a family, succeed, move thousands of miles away, and still, when one phone call drags you back, the memories return like floodwater. And you realize some places don't hold people by geography alone, but by wounds. So what does Derry represent in modern culture? It is the image of a community carrying collective trauma without knowing how to heal. In real life, we've seen towns, institutions, even countries living with tragedy as if it were a locked room no one opens. It might be domestic violence treated as family business. It might be child abuse hidden to avoid scandal. It might be discrimination legalized by the phrase, "That's how it's always been." When a community chooses silence, evil takes two forms. One is the one who commits it. The other is the wall that prevents victims from being heard. Derry is also a lesson in the bystander effect. When responsibility dissolves into the crowd, everyone assumes someone else will act. Everyone believes they're too small. Everyone thinks speaking up won't change anything. And when everyone thinks that way, nothing happens. Pennywise, through a symbolic lens, is the crystallization of that. He isn't only personal fear. He is social fear. Fear of being cast out. Fear of being different. Fear of cracking the smooth surface of peace. He is what makes people choose a false safety over a painful truth. Look deeper, and Pennywise doesn't only consume fear. He consumes loneliness. The children he targets are often those not properly protected. Not necessarily children without parents, but children without adults who truly see them. There is a difference between being near and seeing. Derry is full of adults near their children, but blind to the signs, blind to panic in the eyes, blind to bruises that aren't from falling. lying to a cry for help turning into silence. And when no one sees, the monster only needs one step. In many myths, the monster lives at the village edge, deep in the forest, under the sea, atop a mountain. Humans only need to avoid that place to be safe. But in this story, the monster lives in the drains, right beneath the road to school, beneath the church where people pray, beneath the library where knowledge lies still. That is closer to real life than we want to admit, because modern evil doesn't always come from far away. Often it sits inside familiar structures. It hides in the habit of, don't talk about that. It hides in, don't make a big deal. It hides in the exhaustion that makes people choose avoidance. And that's why defeating Pennywise cannot simply mean killing a monster. If you kill him without changing Derry, something else will grow. Because Pennywise is a proper name for one shape, but it is the essence. Evil is a natural force inside human beings, fed by fear, hatred, indifference. The losers can win once, but the harder fight is breaking the town's curse of looking away. In real life, it's the same. You can arrest a criminal, but if the culture of silence remains, the next victim is only a matter of time. There is an image that lingers, the tunnels and drains under Derry, like a black circulatory system. Pennywise doesn't live in one point. He moves through a network. And that network resembles the networks of rumor, fear, half-told stories. A child disappears. The story moves from mouth to mouth, then sinks, becoming a whisper. When the story sinks, Pennywise has room to breathe. But there is a small light in that darkness, and it isn't dazzling magic. It is the stubbornness of memory and the courage of the weak. The losers aren't heroes with capes. They are trembling children, often wrong, often arguing, often ready to run. But they turn back and hold hands. And that act, in a town that teaches people to turn away, becomes rebellion. It says, I won't let fear eat me in silence. I won't let my friend die without being remembered. I won't let the monster turn tragedy into weather. When you view Pennywise as a symbol, you realize he is a question about what we feed evil with. He feeds on fear, yes, but a community's greatest fear isn't only being killed. The deepest fear is admitting they failed to protect the vulnerable, admitting the order they trust has holes, admitting home might not be safe. That admission hurts. It hurts so much that many choose not to make it. And that choice, repeated across generations, turns Derry into fertile ground for Pennywise. If you want to hear this story as a warning, here is the warning. Evil doesn't need most people to be bad. It only needs most people to be tired. Tired of life. Tired of trouble. Tired of fear. Tired of believing they can't do anything. When most people are tired, a creature like Pennywise only needs patience. He waits for heads to bow. He waits for a victim to whisper, maybe I imagined it. He waits for a community to say, don't make a big deal. And then he eats. But if you want to hear this story as hope, hope is here too. Pennywise's strongest curse is isolation, and the strongest weapon against him is connection. When one person dares to speak, one person dares to believe, one person dares to look straight on, the curse begins to crack. When a community learns to face tragedy instead of burying it, Pennywise loses his meal. When victims are listened to, evil loses its hiding place. That isn't a glorious victory overnight. It is a long, heavy, real fight. And perhaps because it is real, it is frightening. And because it is real, it is worth telling. Derry is a fictional town, but Derry as a mental state can exist anywhere. In a family, a school, a company, a city. Anywhere tragedy is reduced to something small, where pain is dismissed as too sensitive, where truth is traded for quiet. Pennywise may not crawl out of a drain where you live, but it can crawl out of very ordinary sentences. And when you realize that, the clown story stops being a ghost story. It becomes a moral question. If tomorrow there is another Georgie, will we be the one chasing the paper boat? Or the one at the window, watching the rain, then turning away? Now imagine Derry on a beautiful sunny day. Children running over grass, adults laughing in a diner, church bells carrying across town. Everything looks like peace. But under the ground, something is breathing. Not because it is immortal, but because it is fed. Each time the community looks away, it gains another heartbeat. Each time truth is buried, it gains another tunnel. Each time someone says, whatever, another red balloon rises in the dark. And that is why Pennywise is more frightening than any mask. He reminds us that monsters don't come only to kill. Monsters come to test human beings, to test what we choose when evil knocks. Confront it or turn away. Remember or forget. Hold hands or let one another fall into the drain alone. If Derry is a story about a community that looks away, then the story we must write next is this: how not to become Derry. How when darkness comes, we don't pretend we can't see. How laughter doesn't become a trap. And how a paper boat, however small, does not become a one-way ticket into the monster's mouth.